So, 20 fragrances that leave the sexiest trail. All about sillage today. So just imagine you've walked into an elevator and you smell this amazing fragrance. Well, these 20 fragrances will do that for you, for someone else, to say, what was he wearing or what was she wearing? So if you want to find out my 20 favorite fragrances that leave the sexiest trail, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian with Smelling Great Fragrance Reviews. That's right. We're talking about sillage today, the trail you leave behind. So these fragrances, there's 20 of them, are some of my favorites that I've left behind, that people have talked to me about, that I've smelled on other people, that I've said, what are you wearing? That smells fantastic. That smells sexy. So I've got 20 of them for you today, and I'm ranking them. But before we do all that, if this is your first time tuning into my channel and you still haven't subscribed, please click the subscribe button below and also click the bell so you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. So I have ranked the list today, and there are some classics here and there are some more modern ones here, some of my usual suspects. But if you've been following me, you probably know a lot of these. And I'm actually pulling a few that I've actually forgotten about that I also need to talk about because they are great fragrances. So it's going to be a list of fragrances that I think are very, very sexy that I've actually smelled, the trail left behind from other people, and ones that I've actually left behind as well. So the first thing I'm going to start with, and I ranked this pretty low, even though it's quite sexy, I feel like it's so overwhelming that sometimes it might be a little off-putting because it's so strong. But when the scent itself dries down a little bit and then fades away, after that, it's pretty phenomenally sexy. That fragrance is MANCERA's Red Tobacco, and this is an overdose of notes. It's an extreme fragrance. As I said, it's overwhelming, really strong, perfect for winter, but it's really, really sexy. It's a tobacco, and it's vanilla, patchouli, cinnamon. There's some spices. There's oud, saffron, and there's a little bit of a green apple note in here with incense and jasmine. But it's quite sexy when you wear it. It leaves an awesome trail. It's an overwhelming trail, in fact, and that's why I'm ranking it kind of low, because sometimes when fragrances are really, really overwhelming, I don't find them as sexy. But as I said, with this one, if it dries down a little bit, that trail is freaking phenomenal. Like, just imagine you're wearing this on an elevator, that after you had just sprayed this and you've gone out and somebody walked in and then smelled that smell. I've ran into that situation so many times, and I love that about it. And this doesn't disappoint with that particular scenario. So this is MANCERA's Red Tobacco. All the fragrances today are unisex targeted except for one or maybe two, and I'm going to tell you what they are or which they are. But I wanted to do the video in a way that they are anybody could wear these, and even though the one or two fragrances that I have that are male targeted, I think women can totally pull them off. Anyway, moving on. The next fragrance we're going to talk about is MONTALE's Black Oud. A very, very sexy fragrance, and I feel like this is your typical rose and oud combo fragrance, but it has that really, really sexy patchouli in here, some very, very sexy musk, and also labdanum for its ambery touches. This is a very popular style. I find this style to be very, very sexy, and MONTALE does it really well here because they add that very, very sexy patchouli. It's phenomenal, but it is a little on the lower side. Just like MANCERA's Red Tobacco, it's intense, so a little goes a long way. Sometimes it can be overwhelming. So MONTALE's Black Oud is at number 19, and just because it's ranked low, guys, it doesn't mean I don't like the fragrance. I have to do the ranking in a way where I can rank it correctly. So MONTALE's Black Oud is at number 19. Going on to the next fragrance, it's JOVOY's Incident Diplomatique, a really, really sexy fragrance. Awesome combo of Haiti vetiver with Java vetiver, so it's got two kinds of vetivers with lots of patchouli. There's that patchouli that comes in again, and it really, really sexifies a lot of fragrances. And I feel like going through this list, you'll notice that there are many fragrances that use patchouli in the notes. But I was also trying to make sure that this list was not a patchouli list. Even though a lot of the notes will have patchouli, there are only a few fragrances in the list that are focusing on patchouli. But what patchouli does with these fragrances, it just makes them sexy. And this one doesn't disappoint. This one actually I've gotten many compliments with. It's intense though, with lots of vetiver and lots of patchouli. Really, really awesome scent. JOVOY's Incident Diplomatique, a fantastic fragrance. Next fragrance, going back to MANCERA, and this is Hindu Kush. Now this one actually, I find it to be ultra sexy because when you smell it out of the bottle, it's nothing. It's like, oh my god, okay, whatever. And even when I first got this fragrance, I was like, okay, all right, yeah, it's good. It's like, oh my god, it's not like, wow, that's amazing. But I've gotten so many compliments wearing this myself, and then also walking behind people that are wearing it themselves. I'm just like, wow, what is that smell? The trail it leaves behind is fantastic. So if you are looking for fragrances that people will, you know, chase you down the street because you're leaving that sexy trail, this is the kind of fragrance you need to wear. Because this actually is a kind of fragrance that needs to mix with your body chemistry and your body sweat is what I'm going to say. When you perspire a little bit, all of that combined with the notes in here will leave the magical trail that people are going to follow you down for. But what this one is all about is incense, cannabis, spices, woodsy notes, amber, vanilla, patchouli. There's a patchouli. It's fantastic. Hindu Kush, really, really awesome fragrance. That is at number 17. We're going to the house of LABO next at number 16, and this is another 13. 16, 13, no, another 13 at number 16. Now this one's an Ambroxan bomb, and I wanted to feature this one because when I wear the fragrance, I find the scent to be sexy because I love the way Ambroxan mixes with body chemistry and perspiration and sweat and things like that. But I've smelled other people wear this one and I'm like, wow, that is fantastically sexy. Now, I'm ranking this in a way that the beast mode fragrances that are overwhelming are a little lower, but this on the other side is not as intense and like beastly as I want it to be, but it's just the right amount of sexiness, and the trail it leaves behind is fantastic. You do chase people down, you do ask them what they're wearing because they do smell great. In the end, it's all about Ambroxan, some Oakmoss, some Ambrette seeds, there's some Jasmine, citruses and fruits, lighter fruits like pears, and maybe perhaps some crisp apple because it's a very, very crisp fragrance. But once it mixes with the body chemistry, it's really, really sexy and musky. LABO is another 13. Check it out if you don't know it. Next, going to the house of NISHANE, it's HACIVAT, another sexy fragrance that even though it's got a very intense scent, it's a fresh fragrance in the end, but a really deep and rich fresh fragrance with a very, very long-lasting quality. It's all about Oakmoss with the fruity pineapple. There's some grapefruit for the citruses, really, really sexy patchouli, some cedar wood, and also some additional woodsy notes. An overdose of notes here, but very, very sexy. It's a trail you leave behind because even though you've worn the fragrance for 3-4 hours, it still clings on to you, and you leave the trail behind and people come and find you to ask you what you're wearing. I've had friends wear this one, they smell great wearing it. I've worn it, I've gotten compliments, people have asked me what I'm wearing, and it's very, very sexy. Even though I find it to be one of those fragrances that's in that same family or world of Avantis-like fragrances, in the end, this one actually just becomes really, really sexy once worn a little bit and you're moving around and you're leaving that very, very sexy trail. So that is HACIVAT from the house of NISHANE. Now this next one I haven't spoken much about. I have a review on the channel. It's from the house of HISTOIRES de Parfums. This is 1740. Marquis de Sade is the name. So this very, very sexy. It's Immortelle with Artemisia. Now Artemisia has a very kind of licoricey, boozy quality. Leather, patchouli, cardamom, and labdanum. So it's quite sexy with the leather. It's kind of dry and slightly brown sugar caramelized qualities with the Immortelle. The leather also has the patchouli has the sexiness, the leather has the sexiness, but the cardamom and all the notes together are really, really fantastic. HISTOIRES de Parfums has a patchouli fragrance called Noir Patchouli. This one has patchouli with other notes. I kind of prefer this a little more than the other because I just find it to be a lot sexier and really, really interesting the way it smells. The trail you leave behind with this one is on the slightly subtle side in comparison to something like this, which is overdose. But when you get stopped and asked what you're wearing, or I've asked people what they're they're wearing with this one as well. They've told me it's this particular fragrance. So that is Histoires of Parfums 1740 Marquis de Sade. Now going to the house of Tom Ford, this is Tobacco Vanille. Now Tobacco Vanille, here we go with tobacco again, but it's nicely blended with vanilla, and the combination is quite sexy because you got a little bit of dirty ashy tobacco with that sweet, beautiful vanilla with some spices and some fruity notes and cacao. It's really, really sexy and very, very intoxicating as well. Now this one actually is perfect with Thanksgiving around the corner. It's a great Thanksgiving Day fragrance, or even a holiday, you know, like Christmas holidays or whatever kind of a fragrance to wear. I just find it a great, great fragrance for fall and winter, and the trail you leave behind. I've actually smelled Tobacco Vanille so much on people, even as a trail behind, when I don't know who the person is that wore it, but I've smelled it and that trail that they've left behind. Does that make sense to you guys? So that's the kind of a thing that I really, really like. Sometimes when you smell something that you can't figure it out, then it clicks with you and you go, oh, they're wearing Tobacco Vanille. Oh, they're wearing HACIVAT or something like that. Anyway, that's the kind of fragrance this is. This is a great fragrance. This is Tobacco Vanille from Tom Ford. Great, great sillage, great trail that you would leave behind if you're wearing that. Now I do have videos on the channel that explains what the sillage is, what the projection is, and longevity. If you don't know any of that stuff and you're new to the channel or just new to fragrances and you're kind of learning, just search for those keywords, sillage, S-I-L-L-A-G-E, or projection and all that kind of stuff, and you'll learn a little bit about what that stuff is all about, and you kind of understand fragrances a little more. Next fragrance I'm going to talk to you about is from the house of Louis Vuitton, and this is the male targeted fragrance, but I feel like it can be worn by or pulled off by women. This is called Orage. In the end, this is a patchouli fragrance, but it's very, very sexy, and that trail is really, really, really beautifully green, and I guess I can call it a little effervescent and a little like sparkly, but the combination of the patchouli, bergamot, and vetiver with some ISOE super. There's some slight powdery touches from iris. There's musk. There's hedione. It's a great, great scent. It's just a very, very beautiful and very, very sexy patchouli, and it has a big cloud. The sillage is really, really big, and if you've initially sprayed on that fragrance and you're walking around somewhere and people smell it off of you, they're going to stop you and ask you what you're wearing. It just really, really, really has a very, very sexy trail it leaves behind, and that's what I like about this one. I feel like out of all the Louis Vuitton fragrances, a lot of them can be pretty big, but they seem a little light and like disappear quickly, but this one has some depth to it. Now I find it, in comparison to like something like Ombre Nomade from here, I didn't find that trail as sexy as this one. That's why I featured this particular fragrance, even though it's targeted to men. So Orage from Louis Vuitton, a great fragrance with a great trail. Going to the house of Tom Ford again, Noir de Noir. I haven't spoken much about Noir de Noir. I'm pulling it back out, but my very early days with this fragrance, this is like 6-7 years ago when I was wearing this for the first time, and I'd get compliments like there was no tomorrow. I did do a lot of traveling at that time. Well, I still travel, obviously not now, but when I'd wear this fragrance, I had always had a decanter. I'd take decants with me, and I'd replenish quite frequently, and people would smell me right off the bat because I'd put it on and I'd get out and go to an event or something, or go meet with friends or family, and they'd always ask me what I'm wearing. It's that kind of a fragrance because it's quite sexy. Noir de Noir is very, very sexy to me, and it was way in the back of my collection. I pulled it out. There's only a little bit of juice left in here. It's been a while since I've pulled this out, but I find the combination of the notes very, very sexy. It's oud, but then it's not. It's rose, but it's not. It's saffron, but then everything else connected to it. Truffles meaning the kind of the truffles that dogs or pigs would smell underground. That kind of truffles. There's patchouli. There's vanilla. There's oakmoss, and as I mentioned, the oud as well. There's a chocolatey touches in there, but really, really sexy, sexy fragrance. I don't know. The trail is really, really phenomenal with this one. I just love that about it, because when you smell something off of a person and how great they smell, and sometimes it smells sexy, and the combination of the notes with this one I find quite sexy. Anyway, Noir de Noir, and from Tom Ford. If you don't know it, do check that out. It's a classic from Tom Ford, and I hope they never discontinue that one. Even though I haven't been wearing it for a while, I hope to pull it out and start wearing it a little bit here and there. Next up, it's the Tempo from Diptyque. Another great fragrance, great sillage, and then here we have a very, very green patchouli with mate. Mate is that tea note. Lots of clary sage, so aromatic touches. Violet, I'm sorry, this is not violet. I think this is violet leaves. It's a green fragrance, and violet leaves go more green for me than the actual flowers. There's some pink peppers, there's some bergamot, so it's a really, really great, sexy fragrance, and the trail is really, really sexy that you leave behind. Now, I've never smelled this one on other people, but I wear it, and off of me, I can sometimes smell the cloud off of me if I'm walking around places, and then I walk back into my cloud, and then I go, wow, that smells fantastic. That's how fragrances are. And you know, if you know people that might like the fragrances that you're wearing, and if you wear it around them, they're definitely going to compliment you. Or just, you know, random strangers might compliment you as well when you're leaving that trail behind. Anyway, Tempo, a great fragrance from this house. If you don't know Diptyque, do check it out. Now, this next fragrance is a new fragrance that I recently did a house overview of a couple weeks ago. We are doing a bottle giveaway as well, a USA bottle giveaway. It's from the house of Pierre Guillaume, and it's Animal Mondaine. What a fantastic fragrance this is. I feel like I've covered tobacco in this video quite a bit because I find tobacco to be really, really sexy. And this one has a really, really sexy note in here. They've added powdery animalic notes, so it does have some powdery touches, but in the end it's tobacco with honey, there's pear leaf, there's hay, there's mahogany wood, and the animalic powdery notes. It's really, really, really great. It's probably one of my favorite fragrances of this year as a fragrance launch from the designers or the niche world, because I just find it to be great. The combination of the ashy tobacco with the honey and the pear leaf note with those animalic powdery notes, it's very, very sexy. One thing I do want to mention is sometimes the fragrances, the cloud is not as big, so the trail you leave behind is not going to be really, really loud, but you still leave that trail you know, around. And when I was testing this out for that video I just did for this house, I was complimenting myself because it smelled so fantastic. Anyway, Animal Mondaine from the house of Pierre Guillaume. Check it out if you don't know it. Let me know if you know this house. It's a great, great house. Not very hyped though, and hopefully, you know, we can get some hype on the brand out there. All right, next going to the house of Tiziana Terenzi. It's Ursa. Ursa is such a great fragrance, and we're going to the patchouli thing again. It seems like tobacco or patchouli are kind of ruling for me as far as sexiness goes and trail goes, or sillage. So leather, dried fruits, patchouli, rum, LME, tobacco, well, there's tobacco in here as well, incense and vetiver. The combination is really, really sexy. Now, I wanted to pick something from this house. There was a few that I was, you know, trying to figure out if I should include that, but in the end I went with Ursa, and Ursa is definitely the sexy one. Really, really sexy because it's the combination of the animalic leather with the patchouli and also the dried fruits and the rum. So in the end you've got lots of great things happening here. The leather, the dried fruits, which gives it some brightness, the patchouli, the sparkly earthiness, the woodiness, and then the rum for its booziness. Fantastic fragrance. Check it out. It's Ursa from the house of Tiziana Terenzi. Next is Accento Overdose from Xerjoff. This I've worn so much. The very first time I wore this, and I knew some people that were also wearing it at a party I went to last year, and it was a humid party. I mean, the weather was humid. Obviously, it was warm. And everybody that was wearing this fragrance, there was a few people, it was an event, they were projecting this beautiful floral, boozy amberiness off of them, along with me. And I was like really, really drooling over the way that the fragrance smells. It's become one of my favorite fragrances from this house, and I was never even a fan of the original. I'm still not the biggest fan of it. It just doesn't go there for me, but this one, it's out of this world sexy. Fruity notes, jasmine, green accord. So there's green notes in here, there's rose, there's lily of the valley, and then there's some aldehydes, and the aldehydes is what really kind of like that sparkles. There's a sparkliness about it with this one, and gives it a lift and uplifting and airy quality, even though it's a very, very dense fragrance. It's a long-lasting fragrance, and the trail is fantastic. Really, really fantastic. So Accendo Overdose from the House of Xerjoff. If you don't know it, check it out. Next up, going to the House of MONTALE, and it's Intense Cafe. Now this one, I've turned this on to so many women that have discovered it through me, and that they've always wanted a bottle. So probably maybe 9 or 12 different ladies that I know here in San Francisco that I've turned this one on to. And when they wear it, and I run into them here in the city, they're wearing it, and man, that trail that they're leaving behind is fantastic. Now I've gotten compliments with this one as well, because these are the women that I've turned this on to, that they really love and buy a bottle. But it's a fantastic fragrance. It's intense, but not as intense as Black Oud, where it kind of overwhelms, because this one has this like creamy coziness about it. So in the end, it can be intense, but it also is cozy at the same time, because it's the rose with the vanilla, but there's this milky lactonic quality, and there's some ambery touches and floral touches. It's really, really sexy fragrance. So that's the House of MONTALE with Intense Cafe. Going to JOVOY again, and it's a psychedelic. So this is a great patchouli, a very, very sexy trail. If you are a patchouli fan, you gotta check this one out if you don't know it. And it's a big one. It's really, really big one, but it doesn't overwhelm like red tobacco does, because red tobacco really overwhelms. This one doesn't overwhelm unless you have a hatred for patchouli. Then you're gonna think, oh no, that's not for me. But it's a really, really intense experience. It's dark chocolatey, it's woody, it's sparkly with the patchouli, but very, very sexy. There's musky touches, there's labdanums for ambery touches, and there's little light touches of geranium, rose, and musk thrown in, but a very fantastic smell. The trail you'll leave behind with this is phenomenal. So that's psychedelic from the House of JOVOY. Next one, we're going to the House of Raja Parfums. This is Parfum de la Nuit number 3. This is sex in a bottle, literally a sex in a bottle. It's really, really, really sexy. And if you like sexy fragrances, you've got to try this one. The reason I find it to be sexy is just, it's leather, but it's not. It's cumin, and it's not. It's incense, then it's not. Lots of amber. There's lots of cardamom. There's styrax, which really is really sexy. Now, styrax and benzoin are kind of in the same family, so it's a resin. There's labdanum, so there's ambery touches, there's leathery touches, there's aromatic, spicy touches, smoky touches, but a combination, it's out of this world sexy. And the trail is really big. It's a big cloud too. So, but again, then again, it's not overwhelming like this one can be. That's why, as I said, I've ranked this lower, because even though I find it to be sexy, it's really intense. Here, it's the right amount of the trail, the sillage, and the sexiness all rolled into one. Really, really fantastic fragrance. If you don't know it, check it out. It's Parfum de la Nuit number 3 from Raja Parfums. Now, this one I haven't spoken about much, but it is such a really, really great fragrance. Again, it's not one of those really big fragrances where you get overwhelmed, but the subtleties of this sexiness and the trail is fantastic. This is Charlatan from the House of Fort Manley. Now, this also reminds me a little bit of this right here. There are some matching notes as well. It's kind of like a skankier version of Noir de Noir, because this one has an amped up jasmine note, and the jasmine is a little on the dirty side. And so in addition to that, there's there's a dark chocolate note, there's a pear note, but there's rose, there's truffle, and those were all featured in Noir de Noir. There's some patchouli, there's amber, there's some osmanthus, but really, really sexy. I mean, it's really, really sexy. It is probably the best fragrance this house has done. Even though it's similar to Noir de Noir, I find it to be the better version of the two, because I've worn this so much I've worn it, but this one just takes the cake. I just wish it was a little more beefier. I just feel like it needs a little more intensity. Just give me, like intensity, like beef it up a little bit. But it could get really overwhelming, I think, if you do that. So I think what they've given us is just the right amount of beauty and sexy. Anyway, this is Fort Manley's Charlatan. If you don't know that one, I highly recommend that one. It's fantastic. Next up, going to the House of Frederick Malle. It's Portrait of a Lady. Yes, this one I just recently did a video, a 10th anniversary video with Dahlia. If you haven't caught that, go check it out. It's a long video, so some of you were complaining that it's too long, but stay tuned for a lot more long videos, because they're going to get longer here on the channel. But this one is fantastic with the way it smells. I've known about it for a good 8 years, since 2012. It's rose, it's patchouli, it's incense, it's raspberry, it's spices, and additional fruity notes like blackcurrant, but an overall really, really sexy concoction. The trail you leave behind is definitely significant. People will notice it, but it doesn't overwhelm, once again, like red tobacco. Red tobacco overwhelms, but I find it to be very sexy as well. But this one, it's out of this world beautiful. A lot of men think that it's a little grandma-ish or old lady-ish. I don't know why. Try it. It's a really, really fantastic fragrance. So that's Portrait of a Lady. And last but not least, we're going to end this video with right here. So either or version, the original version, the Eau de Parfum, or the extrait version of Baccarat Rouge from the house of Maison Francis Christian. I just absolutely, I love this one. I think it was such a, it was not a love at first sniff is what I was going to say. It was such a not love at first sniff. I hated this fragrance when it first came out. I mean, the original version. I just hated the smell. I thought, what the hell is this fragrance? But I just turned like a 180. I'm just obsessed with it, and I think it's because I smelled so many people wearing it. Every time I would go to a, you know, Neiman Marcus, I would smell it in the air. Every time I'd walk around somewhere fancy, people would be wearing this, and I just got the overdose. And then it started becoming copied and copied and copied and copied. I'm in love with it, and I think it's a great trail. I've smelled it so much in elevators, on stairs, in halls, in places that I've gone to here in the city. People do wear this one, and it is really, really, I find it to be a very sexy fragrance. But what this one's all about is saffron, ambroxan, amberwood, jasmine, fir, cedar, and the X-ray version has the almond note, which kind of gives it a more smoother quality. But in the end, I find it to be very sexy. Go figure, you know, a fragrance I hated once, now I'm obsessed with it. That is Baccarat Rouge 540, either the original version or the X-ray version in the red bottle. Anyway, guys, I hope you like this video of 20 fragrances that leave a sexy trail, or a sillage. I hope you like this idea. I hope you have fragrances that you wear that leave this really sexy trail that people have commented on, or that you've smelled other people wear that you've commented on. Let me know what those fragrances are. Let me know if you know these fragrances that I spoke to you about today, the 20 different, mostly niche fragrances, and I think it looked like only one was male targeted, which was the Orage, and just wanted to point that out. I think I'm going to start pointing out to you guys, because you guys asked me, is it male targeted, is it female targeted, is it unisex? And yes, as I said, today's video, all unisex except for Orage, but I feel like Orage is fairly unisex for women to pull off as well. If you have any questions or comments, please this below. Otherwise, please like this video, please share it. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.